friends, my name is Mandy Rose Nichols. Welcome to Novel Tea. Tonight I'm drinking Aries tea from the Cat and the Kettle. I'll put a description down, a link down in the description below. They're a Seattle-based tea maker here, and they make very fine teas if you're a tea person. Elliot's already getting snoozy. Felicity's already getting snoozy. Tonight we're reading Little Ida's Flowers from Grimm's Fairy Tales. You got your tea, you got your jammies on, you ready? Let's go. Little Ida's Flowers. My poor flowers are quite dead, said little Ida. They were so pretty last evening, but now the last leaf has withered and drooped. Why do they do that? She asked the student who sat on the sofa. She was very fond of him because he told such good stories and could cut such amusing figures out of paper. Hearts with dancing ladies inside of them, flowers of all sorts, and castles with doors that you could open and close. He was a rollicking fellow. Why do my flowers look so ill today? She asked him again, and showed him her withered bouquet. Is that a euphemism? Don't you know what's the matter with them? The student said. They were at a ball last night. That's why they can scarcely hold up their heads. Flowers can't dance, said little Ida. Oh, indeed they can, said the student. As soon as it gets dark in here, we go to sleep. They frolic about in a fine fashion. Almost every night they give a ball. Can't children go to the ball? Little daisies can go. So can lilies of the valley. Where do the prettiest flowers dance? Ida asked. Haven't you often visited the beautiful flower garden just outside of town? Around the castle where the king lives in the summertime? You remember, the place where the swans swim close if you offer them breadcrumbs? Believe me, that's where the prettiest flowers dance. Yesterday I was there with my mother, said Ida, but there wasn't a leaf on the trees or a flower left. Where are they? Last summer I saw so many. They're inside the castle, of course, said the student. Confidently, just as soon as the king comes back. Confidentially. Just as soon as the king comes back down to town with all of his court, the flowers run from the garden into the castle and enjoy themselves. You should see them. The two loveliest roses climb up on the throne where they are the king and the queen. All the red coxcombs line up on either side and they stand and bow like grooms in the bedchamber. Then all the best dressed flowers come and the grand ball starts. The blue violets are naval cadets. Their partners, of whom they call Miss, are hyacinths and crocuses. The tulips and tiger lilies are the old chaperones to see to it the dancing's done well and that everyone behaves properly. But, said little Ida, does anybody punish the flowers for dancing in the king's own castle? Nobody knows a thing about it, said the student. To be sure, there's the old castle keeper who likes to watch over things. Sometimes he comes in the night with an enormous bunch of keys. But as soon as the flowers hear the keys jangle, they keep quiet and hide, with only their little heads peeking out from behind the curtains. Then the old castle keeper says, I smell flowers in here. But he can't see any. What fun, Ida clapped her hands. But couldn't I see the flowers either? Oh, easily, said the student. The very next time you go there, remember to peep in the windows. There you'll see them, and as I did today. A tall yellow lily laid stretched out on the sofa, pretending to be a lady in waiting. Can the flowers who live in the botanical gardens visit the castle? Can they go that far? Why, certainly. They can all fly that way if it suits them. Haven't you seen lovely butterflies? White, yellow, red ones? They almost look like flowers, and that's what they really used to be. They are flowers who've jumped off their stems high into the air. They beat the air with their petals as though these were little wings, and so they manage to fly. If they behave themselves nicely, they get permission to fly all day long instead of having to go home and sit on their stems. In time, their petals turn to real wings. You've seen them yourself. However, it's quite possible that the botanical garden flowers have never been to the king's castle and don't know anything about the fun that goes on in there almost every night. Therefore, I'll tell you how to arrange a surprise for the botanical professor. You know the one I mean. He lives quite near here. Well, the next time you go to the garden, tell one of his flowers that they're having a great ball inside the castle. One flower will tell the others, and off they'll fly. When the professor comes out of the garden, not one flower will he mind. And there they'll all have gone. When they go back, he'll never guess. How can a flower tell the others? You know flowers don't speak. They can't speak, the student agreed, but they can signal. Haven't you noticed that when the breeze blows, the flowers nod to one another, make signs with their leaves? Why, it's as plain as we talk. Can the professor understand their signs? Certainly he can. One morning he came into his garden and he saw a big single nettle leaf signaling to a glorious red carnation. You are so beautiful and I love you so much. But the professor didn't like that kind of thing, so he slapped the nettle's leaves, and there its fingers. It stung so badly that he hadn't laid hands on a stinging nettle since. Oh, how jolly, little Ida laughed. How can anyone stuff a child's head with such nonsense? Said the prosy counselor, who had come to call and sit on the sofa too. He didn't like the student a bit. He always grumbled when he saw the student cut out of those strange, amusing pictures. Sometimes a man hanging from the gallows and holding a heart in his hand to show that he had stolen people's hearts away. Sometimes an old witch riding a broomstick and balancing her husband on a noose. The counselor highly disapproved of those, and he would say, as he said now, "How can anyone stuff a child's head with such nonsense and stupid fantasy?" But to little Ida, what the student told her about flowers was marvelously amusing, and she kept right on thinking about it. Her flowers couldn't hold their heads up because they were tired from dancing all night. Why, they must be ill. She took them to where she kept her toys on a nice little table, with a whole drawer full of pretty things. Her doll, Sophie, lay asleep in the doll's bed, but little Ida told her, "Sophie, you really have to get up and to be satisfied to sleep in the drawer tonight because my little poor flowers are ill. Maybe if I let them sleep in your bed tonight, they will get well again." When she took the doll up, Sophie looked as cross as could be and didn't say a word. She was sulky because she couldn't keep her own bed. Ida put the flowers to bed, tucked the little covers around them, and she told them to be good and still, while she made them some tea so that they could get well and be up and about tomorrow. She carefully drew the curtains around the little bed so the morning sun would not shine in their faces. All evening long she kept thinking about what the student had said before she climbed into bed herself. She peeped through the window curtains at the fine potted plants that belonged to her mother, hyacinths and tulips. She whispered very softly, "I know you are going to the ball tonight." But the flowers pretended not to understand her. They didn't move a leaf, but little Ida knew all about them. After she was in bed, she lay there a long while, thinking how pleasant it must be to see flowers dance in the king's castle. Were my flowers really there? She wondered. Then she fell asleep. When she woke up again in the night, she'd been dreaming of flowers, and of the student, and of the prosy counselor who had scolded him and said it was all silly nonsense. It was very still in the bedroom where Ida was. The night lamp glowed on the table, and Ida's mother and father were asleep. Are my flowers still asleep in Sophie's bed? Ida wondered. That's what I'd like to know. She lifted herself a little higher on the pillow and looked towards the door, which stood half open. In there were her flowers and all her toys. She listened. It seemed to her that someone was playing the piano, very softly and more beautifully than she had ever heard it played. I'm perfectly sure that those flowers are all dancing, she said to herself. Oh my goodness, wouldn't I love to see them? But she dare not get up, because that might waken her mother and father. I do wish the flowers would come in here, she thought, but they didn't. The music kept playing, and it sounded so lovely she couldn't stay in her bed another minute. She tiptoed to the door and peeped into the next room. Oh, how funny! What a sight she saw in there! No night lamp burned in the next room, but it was well lighted just the same. The moonlight streamed through the window upon the middle of the floor, and it was almost as bright as day. The hyacinths and the tulips lined up in 2 long rows across the floor. Not one was left by the window. The flower pots stood there, empty, while the flowers danced gracefully around the room, making a complete chain and holding each other together by their long leaves as they swung around. At the piano sat a tall yellow lily. Little Ida remembered it from last summer, because the student had said, "Doesn't that lily look like Miss Line?" Everyone had laughed at the time, But now little Ida noticed that there was the most striking resemblance. When the lily played, it had the very same mannerisms as the young lady, sometimes bending its long yellow face to one side, sometimes the other, nodding in time with the lovely music. No one suspected that little Ida was there. She saw a nimble blue crocus jump up on the table where her toys were, go straight to the doll's bed, and throw back the curtains. The sick flowers lay there, but they got up at once and nodded down to the others that they also wanted to dance. The old chimney sweep doll, whose lower lip was broken, rose and made a bow to the pretty flowers. They looked quite themselves again as they jumped down to join the others and have a good time. It seemed as if something clattered off the table. Little Ida looked and saw that the birch wand that had been left over from the Madrigal's time was jumped down as if he were a flower too. The wand did cut quite a flowery figure, with his paper rosettes to top him off, a little wax figure who had a broad-trimmed hat just like that one that the counselor wore. The wand skipped about on his 3 wooden legs and stamped as hard as he could, for he was dancing the mazurka. The flowers could not dance it, because they were too light to stamp as he did. All of a sudden, the wax figure grew tall and important. He whirled around to the paper flowers beside him and said, "How can anyone stuff a child's head with such nonsense and stupid fantasy?" At that moment, he was the perfect image of the big-headed counselor, just as sallow and quite as cross. But the paper flowers hit back. They struck his thin shanks until he crumpled into a very small wax mannequin. The change was so ridiculous that little Ida could not keep from laughing. Wherever the sceptered wand danced, the counselor had danced too, whether he made himself tall and important or remained a little wax figure in a black hat. The real flowers put in a kind word for him, especially those who had lain ill in the doll's bed, and the birch wand let him rest. Just then, they thought they heard a loud knocking in the drawer where Ida's doll, Sophie, laid with the other toys. The chimney sweep rushed to the edge of the table, lay flat on his stomach, and managed to pull the drawer out a little way. Sophie sat up and looked around her, most surprised. "Why, they are having a ball," she said. "Why hasn't somebody told me about it?" "Would you dance with me?" the chimney sweep asked her. "A fine partner you'd be," she said, and turned her back on him. She sat on the edge of the drawer, hoping one of the flowers would ask her to dance, but not one of them did. She coughed. Still, not one of them asked her. To make matters worse, the chimney sweep had gone out dancing by himself, which he did pretty well. As none of the flowers paid the least bit of attention to Sophie, she let herself tumble from the drawer to the floor with a bang. Now all of the flowers came running to ask, "Did you hurt yourself?" They were very polite to her, especially those that had slept in her bed. But she wasn't hurt a bit. Ida's flowers thanked her for the use of her nice bed and treated her well. They took her out in the middle of the floor where the moon shone and danced with her all the while flowers made a circle around them. Sophie wasn't cross at all now. She said they might keep her bed. She didn't in the least mind sleeping in the drawer. But the flowers said, "Thank you, no, we can't live long enough to keep in your bed. Tomorrow we shall be dead. Tell little Ida to bury us in the garden, next to her canary bird's grave. Then we shall come up against next summer, more beautiful than ever." "Oh, you mustn't die," said Sophie, and kissed all the flowers. Then the drawing-room door opened, and many more splendid flowers tripped in. Ida couldn't imagine where they were coming from unless... Why, they must have come straight from the king's castle. First came 2 magnificent roses, wearing little golden crowns. Those were the king and the queen. Then came charming gillyflowers and carnations who greeted everybody. They brought the musicians along. Large poppies and peonies blew upon pea pods until they were red in the face. Blue hyacinths and little snowdrops tinkled their bells. It was such funny music. Many other flowers followed them, and they all danced together, blue violets with pink primroses and daisies with lilies of the valley. All the flowers kissed one another, and that was very pretty to look at. When they came time to say goodnight, little Ida sneaked back to bed too. where she dreamed of all she had seen. As soon as it was morning, she hurried to her little table to see if her flowers were still there. She threw back the curtain around the bed. Yes, they were still there, but they were even more faded than yesterday. Sophie was lying in the drawer where Ida had put her. She looked quite sleepy. "Do you remember what you were to tell me?" little Ida asked. But Sophie just looked stupid and didn't say a word. "You're no good at all," Ida told her. "And to think of how nice they were to you, and how all of them danced with you." She opened a little pasteboard box, nicely decorated with pictures of birds, and laid the dead flowers in it. "This will be your pretty coffin," she told them. "When my cousins from Norway come to visit, they will help me bury you in the garden, so that you may come up again next summer and be more beautiful than ever." Her Norwegian cousins were two pleasant boys named Jonas and Adolf. Their father had given them 2 new crossbows, which they brought with them for Ida to see. She told them how her poor flowers had died, and they got permission to hold a funeral. The little boys marched first with their crossbows on their shoulders. Little Ida followed with her dead flowers in the nice box. In the garden they dug a little grave. Ida first kissed the flowers, then she closed the box and laid it in the earth. Adolf and Jonas shot their crossbows over the grave, for they had no guns or cannons. The end. That was the end of Little Ida's, I'm missing the Little Ida's Flowers. Tonight we were drinking Aries tea from the Cat and the Kettle. Elliot's already asleep. Felicity is passed out. We're all in our jammies. It's time for bed. Good night, friends.